Vea stood in the grand hall of the Coalition diplomatic station and tried not to show her fear. Her silver skin felt cold under the ceremonial armor and her hands wanted to shake. She kept them still. A Valterian princess did not show weakness. Not ever. Through the tall windows she could see the human ship docking. It was smaller than Valterian warships with smooth lines instead of sharp edges. Everything about humans was different. Everything about them was wrong according to her family. Her uncle, High Commander Kresh, stood beside her. His face was hard as stone. He had not spoken to her since they arrived at the station 3 days ago. The message was clear. She was a disappointment. She was a tool. She was being given away to end a war, married to a human as if she meant nothing. Vea was the 4th daughter of House Thandros. Her 3 older sisters had married Valterian nobles. Her 2 brothers commanded fleets. But Vea, she was expendable. When the Coalition needed someone to marry a human commander to seal the peace treaty, her family volunteered her without asking. Without caring, the doors opened. The human delegation walked in. Vea had seen humans before, but only in military briefings. They were smaller than Valterians, softer looking. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink instead of silver. They had hair on their heads in strange colors. They looked fragile. But Valterians said humans were dangerous. They were too emotional, too unpredictable. They made decisions based on feelings instead of logic. They cared about things that did not matter. Weakness, her tutors called it. Humans were weak. The human commander walked at the front of his group. He was tall for a human with dark hair and brown skin. He wore a formal uniform, dark blue with silver markings. His eyes were dark brown and they swept across the room with careful attention. When they landed on Vea, they stopped. Vea lifted her chin. She would not look away first. She would not show fear, even if her heart was beating too fast, even if she wanted to run. The human commander studied her for a moment. Then he did something strange. He smiled. Not a cruel smile or a mocking smile, just a small, quiet smile. Then he looked away, giving her space. Vea did not understand. Valterian males always stared. They assessed. They judged. They made sure you knew they were stronger. But this human had simply looked, smiled, and moved on. It made no sense. The ceremony began. Coalition diplomats read from prepared statements in multiple languages. They talked about peace and cooperation and the bright future ahead. None of it felt real. Vea stood straight and still, her face a mask. She had been trained for this. A Valterian princess showed no emotion in public. She noticed her family was not there. Not her father. Not her mother. Not her sisters or brothers. The seats reserved for House Thandros were empty. It was a message. A public insult. They wanted everyone to know they did not approve of this marriage. They wanted everyone to know Vea meant nothing to them. Her throat felt tight. She swallowed and kept her face blank. The human commander stepped forward when his name was called. Daniel Hayes, they announced. Commander of the Earth Defense Force, age 34. Decorated officer. She had read his file. He was good at his job. He was smart. He had lost his family in a border conflict 10 years ago. After that, he had devoted himself to military service. Vea stepped forward when her name was called. Princess Vearin of House Thandros, 4th daughter, age 28, trained in combat and diplomacy. The file did not mention that she had never been good enough, that she had spent her whole life trying to earn approval that never came. They stood facing each other. Daniel Hayes was slightly taller than her. His eyes met hers, and again she saw that strange gentleness. She did not understand it. She did not trust it. The coalition official asked them to join hands. Vea extended her hand. It was part of the human ceremony, she had been told. Daniel took her hand carefully as if she might break. His hand was warm. Valterian hands were always cool. The difference startled her. They spoke the words they were supposed to speak. Promises about cooperation and respect and working together for peace. The words felt hollow. This was not a real marriage. This was politics. This was a bargaining chip. This was her entire life reduced to a signature on a treaty. When it was done, people clapped politely. The ceremony was over. Vea was now officially married to a human. Her family had not come. Her people thought she was a traitor, and she had no idea what would happen next. Daniel released her hand and stepped back. The official announced there would be a reception. All delegates were invited to celebrate. Vea felt her stomach turn. She would have to stand there and smile while people whispered about her. While they judged her, while they pitied her, Daniel turned to her. He spoke quietly so only she could hear. His voice was deeper than she expected and calmer. "Have you eaten today?" Vea stared at him. Of all the things he could have said, she had not expected that. "What food?" he said. "Have you eaten? These ceremonies always start too early, and I am guessing nobody offered you breakfast she had not eaten." She had been too nervous. But why was he asking? "I am fine," she said stiffly. Daniel glanced toward the reception hall where diplomats were already gathering. Then he looked back at her. He lowered his voice even more. "That reception is going to be terrible. Hours of small talk and fake smiles. Would you like to skip it?" Vea's eyes widened. "Skip it? We are supposed to attend. Supposed to, yes. But I have been to 100 of these things. They are all the same. People will not miss us. And honestly, I think we could both use some actual food and some quiet." His eyes were kind. He was not mocking her. He was not testing her. He was genuinely asking what she wanted. No one had ever asked Vea what she wanted. Not in her entire life she did not know what to say. Her training told her to refuse to do her duty, to attend the reception and represent her house with dignity. But her house had not even come to the ceremony, and the thought of standing in that room being stared at and whispered about made her feel sick. "Yes," she said quietly. "I would like to skip it." Daniel smiled again. That same small, genuine smile. "Good. Follow my lead." He turned and spoke briefly with one of the coalition officials, something about needing to review ship assignments and prepare for departure. The official looked annoyed but nodded. Daniel thanked him politely, then gestured for Vea to follow. They walked through the corridors of the station. Vea expected him to take her to his ship, to his quarters, to make demands. That was what Valtirian males did in political marriages. They asserted control immediately. They made sure their new wife understood the hierarchy, but Daniel did not take her to his ship. He took her to a small observation deck on the outer ring of the station. Through the windows, stars stretched out in every direction. A few small tables and chairs were scattered around the space. It was empty and quiet. Daniel went to a food dispenser on the wall and ordered 2 meals. He brought them to a table by the window and set one in front of her. Human food, she realized. Simple but warm. Some kind of grain dish with vegetables and protein. He sat down across from her and started eating. He did not tell her to eat. He did not command or instruct. He just ate his own food and looked out at the stars. Vea sat stiffly. She did not touch the food. She watched him, waiting for the trap, waiting for him to drop the kind act and show his true intentions. After a few minutes, Daniel glanced at her. "You do not have to eat if you do not want to, but it is safe, I promise. Just basic station food, nothing fancy. Why are you doing this?" Vea asked. Her voice came out harder than she intended. Daniel set down his fork. "Doing what?" "Being kind. Pretending to care. What do you want from me?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I am not pretending, and I do not want anything from you except maybe a chance to get to know you. This situation is strange for both of us. I thought we could start by just talking like 2 people instead of 2 political symbols." Vea did not believe him. She could not. If she let herself believe him and he turned cruel later, it would hurt too much. Better to keep her guard up. "Better to expect nothing. I am not hungry," she said. Daniel nodded. "That is fine." He pushed the plate to the side but did not take it away. "Just in case you change your mind." They sat in silence. Vea kept waiting for him to get angry at her refusal, at her coldness. But he just looked out the window and seemed comfortable with the quiet. Finally, he spoke again. "We will be assigned to the Meridian. It is a diplomatic vessel, joint crew of humans and Valtirians. We will have quarters there, separate quarters if you prefer. This marriage is political. I am not going to force anything. You will have your own space and your own privacy." Vea looked at him sharply. Separate quarters? That was not how Valtirian marriages worked. Married couples shared space. The husband controlled the household. Why would he offer her separate quarters? Unless it was a trick. Unless he was trying to make her feel safe before he took that safety away. "Why?" she asked. "Because you should have a choice," Daniel said simply. "Because you are a person, not property. Because I would want the same if our positions were reversed." Vea did not know what to say. She stared at him, searching for any sign of deception. But his face was open and honest. His eyes were calm. He meant what he said. It did not make sense. Nothing about this human made sense. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding ceremony, and Vea still felt like a stranger on the Meridian. She kept to herself, spending most of her time in the combat training room or alone in her quarters. It was easier that way, safer. Daniel had kept his promise. He never entered her quarters without permission. He never demanded her time or attention. He was polite when they passed in the corridors, friendly even, but he gave her space. It should have made her feel better. Instead, it confused her. The Valterian crew members avoided her. They spoke to her only when necessary, their voices cold and formal. She heard them whisper when she walked by. Traitor, weak, disgrace. The words were like knives, but she kept her face blank. She had been trained to ignore pain. The human crew members tried to be friendly. They smiled at her. They said good morning. They invited her to meals. She declined every time. She did not know how to talk to them. She did not understand their casual way of speaking, their jokes, their easy laughter. Everything about them felt foreign. Late one night, Vea was in the training room. She had programmed the combat drones to maximum difficulty. They attacked in patterns fast and relentless. She moved through the exercises, blocking and striking, her body following movements she had practiced since childhood. But tonight, she was not training. She was punishing herself for being weak, for being worthless, for being the daughter nobody wanted. She pushed harder, ignoring the burning in her muscles, ignoring the way her breath came in gasps. A drone struck her shoulder, hard. Pain shot through her arm. She stumbled but forced herself to keep going. Another strike. Another burst of pain. She deserved it. She deserved all of it. Suddenly the drone stopped. The simulation shut down. Vea spun around, breathing hard. Daniel stood by the control panel. He wore casual clothes, not his uniform. His face was serious. What are you doing? Vea demanded. Her voice came out sharp, angry. I could ask you the same thing, Daniel said quietly. That simulation was set to kill mode. Those drones could have broken bones or worse. I can handle it, Vea said. She turned away from him. Restart the simulation, no. Vea turned back, her eyes flashing. Excuse me, I said no. Daniel walked toward her. His voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath. You are injured. Your shoulder is already swelling, and you have been in here for 3 hours. This is not training. This is self-destruction. You do not get to tell me what to do, Vea said. Her hands clenched into fists. You are right. I do not. But I am asking you to stop. Please, why? Vea's voice rose. Why do you care? This marriage is political. You said so yourself. We are strangers. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, We do not have to be. The words hit her harder than any drone strike. She felt something crack inside her chest, something she had kept locked away for years. You do not understand, she said. Her voice shook now, betraying her. I am not worth caring about. My own family made that clear. I am expendable. I am nothing. That is not true. It is. Vea turned away from him again. She could not let him see her face. Could not let him see how much it hurt. They gave me away like I was trash. They did not even come to the ceremony. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that feels like? No, Daniel said softly. I do not. But I know what it feels like to be alone. And I know what it feels like to think you are not good enough. Those feelings lie to you, Vea. They make you believe things that are not true. She wanted to argue. She wanted to push him away. But she was so tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of fighting. Tired of being alone. Daniel walked closer until he was standing beside her. He did not touch her, but she could feel his presence, solid and steady. Pushing yourself until you break will not prove anything to them, he said. They have already decided not to value you. That is their failure, not yours. You do not need to destroy yourself trying to earn something they will never give. Vea felt tears burn behind her eyes. She blinked them away furiously. Valterians did not cry. Crying was weakness, but Daniel had seen. Come on, he said gently. Let me look at that shoulder. Medical bay is still open. I am fine. Vea. His voice was patient but firm. Please. She looked at him. His eyes were kind, concerned. Not pitying, just caring. It was the caring that broke her. Fine, she said quietly. They walked to the medical bay in silence. The ship was quiet at this hour. Most of the crew was sleeping. The medical officer on duty was a young human woman named Sophie. She was Daniel's second-in-command, Vea had learned. She took one look at Vea's shoulder and shook her head. "You are lucky you did not dislocate it," Sophie said, running a scanner over the injury. "Deep bruising, but nothing broken. You need rest and ice. And maybe consider turning down the difficulty level in the training room." Vea said nothing. Sophie applied a cold compress and gave her pain medication. "Thank you," Vea managed. Sophie smiled. "Anytime. And hey, if you ever want a sparring partner instead of drones, let me know. I could use the practice." Vea blinked. "You want to train with me?" "Sure. I have heard Valtirian combat techniques are incredible. I would love to learn from you." No one had ever wanted to learn from Vea before. She did not know how to respond. "Maybe," she said finally. Sophie's smile widened. "Great. See you around, Vea." Daniel walked Vea back to her quarters. She expected him to lecture her, to tell her she had been foolish. But he said nothing until they reached her door. "Get some rest," he said. "And Vea, you are not nothing. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you." He left before she could respond. Vea lay in her bed that night, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about Daniel's words, about the way he had looked at her with concern, not judgment, about Sophie's friendly offer, about the way these humans kept being kind to her even when she gave them nothing in return. Over the next few days, small things began to change. Vea noticed the temperature in her quarters had shifted. It was warmer now, matching Valtirian preferences exactly. She had not changed the settings. Someone else had done it for her. She found books in the common area, books about Valtirian history and philosophy, written in her language. They had not been there before. Someone had requested them from the ship's library. One morning, she discovered a small plant in her quarters. It was a violet flower from Valtiria, the kind that grew in the gardens of her childhood home. The kind she had mentioned once weeks ago in passing conversation with Daniel. She had thought he was not really listening, but he had been, and somehow he had grown this flower for her. Vea touched the soft petals carefully. Her throat felt tight. No one had ever given her flowers before. No one had ever listened to what she wanted and remembered. She began eating meals in the common dining area instead of alone in her quarters. Daniel was usually there along with some of the human crew. They did not push her to talk, but they made space for her at the table. They included her in conversations without demanding she participate. Slowly, carefully, Vea started to respond. Small comments at first, answering questions about Valtirian culture, asking questions about human customs. The conversations felt strange and awkward, but also good, like using muscles that had been frozen for too long. 2 weeks later, the Meridian received orders to attend a coalition summit. All major powers would be represented. Vea's stomach sank when she heard. High Commander Kresh would be there with a Valtirian delegation. The summit took place at a large diplomatic station. Hundreds of delegates filled the grand hall. Vea wore formal Valtirian dress, her armor polished and perfect. She stood beside Daniel, who wore his dress uniform. Kresh arrived with his entourage. His eyes found Vea immediately. He walked directly to her, ignoring Daniel completely. "So this is what you have become," Kresh said in Valtirian. His voice dripped with contempt. "Standing beside your human master like a tame pet." Vea's face burned, but she kept her voice steady. "Commander Hayes is not my master. He is my husband," Kresh laughed. "A political arrangement. Nothing more. You were given away because you were worthless to us. Do not pretend this means anything." Other delegates were watching now. Vea felt their eyes on her. She wanted to disappear. Then Daniel spoke. "In perfect Valtirian, High Commander Kresh," Daniel said, his voice calm and clear. "I understand you question the validity of my marriage to Princess Vea. Allow me to clarify. She is my wife not because of politics, but because she chose to stand beside me. And I chose to stand beside her. That is what makes a true partnership." Kresh stared at him. "You speak our language, I do." Daniel switched back to standard so others could understand. "I learned it because I wanted to understand my wife's culture and heritage. Because I respect her, something you clearly failed to do." The hall went quiet. No one spoke to a high commander like that, especially not a human. Kresh's face darkened with anger. "You dare insult me?" "I dare to defend my wife's honor," Daniel said, "which is more than her own family has done. You call her worthless. I call her brilliant. You call her weak. I call her strong. The difference between us is that I actually know her. You judged her without ever trying to understand her. Vea could not breathe. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever stood up for her. Certainly not in front of an audience. Certainly not against someone as powerful as Kresh. Kresh looked like he wanted to strike Daniel. But they were in a diplomatic setting, surrounded by witnesses. He could not afford to lose control. 2 months had passed since Vea decided to try. Try to be friends with Daniel. Try to understand humans. Try to let herself feel something other than fear and anger. It was harder than she expected, and easier somehow at the same time. She and Daniel ate breakfast together most mornings now. They talked about small things. The ship's operations. The news from various systems. Sometimes just the weather simulations in the Arboretum. The conversations were simple, but they felt important. Like they were building something brick by brick. Daniel was patient. He never pushed her to share more than she was ready to give, but he shared pieces of his own life freely. Stories about growing up on Earth, about his family before they died, about the first time he saw the stars from space. Vea found herself listening carefully to every word. She learned that Daniel loved old music and terrible jokes, that he was terrible at chess but excellent at strategy games, that he cared deeply about his crew and would do anything to protect them. She also learned that humans were different from Valterians in ways that confused and fascinated her. They made decisions with their hearts, not just their minds. They cried when they were sad and laughed when they were happy. They hugged each other freely. They said "I love you" to friends, not just romantic partners. Everything Vea had been taught said emotions were weakness, but watching the human crew, she saw something else. Their emotions made them strong, made them care, made them fight harder for each other. One morning, an emergency alert woke everyone on the ship. Vea rushed to the bridge, still in her sleep clothes. Daniel was already there, along with Sophie and the senior staff. "We got a distress call," Sophie reported. "Civilian transport vessel. They are caught in a debris field about 4 hours from here. Life support is failing. They have maybe 6 hours before it gives out completely." "How many people on board?" Daniel asked. 43, including 12 children. Daniel's face was grim. "Set course. Maximum speed. Alert the medical bay and prepare rescue shuttles." Vea stepped forward. "Commander, the Meridian is not a rescue ship. We do not have the equipment for this kind of operation. Protocol says we should wait for a proper rescue vessel." Daniel looked at her. "They will be dead before a rescue ship arrives. We are the only ship close enough to help." "But the risk," Vea said. "The debris field is unstable. We could damage the ship. We could lose crew members in the rescue operation." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "But there are 43 people who will die if we do nothing, including children. I cannot live with that, can you?" Vea opened her mouth to argue. "In Valterian culture, you did not risk valuable assets for strangers. You calculated the worth of the risk versus the reward. 43 civilians were not worth potentially damaging a diplomatic vessel and its crew." But she looked at Daniel's face and saw absolute certainty. He was going to do this whether she agreed or not. Because for him it was not a calculation. It was about people in danger who needed help. "The debris field is too dense for standard approach," Vea said finally. "But Valterian combat ships use a weaving pattern for navigating similar terrain. If we adapt it for the Meridian systems, we could reduce the risk by 30%. Daniel's face lit up. "Can you program it?" "Yes, give me access to navigation." Sophie pulled up the navigation console. Vea worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. She input the pattern modifications, adjusting for the Meridian size and capabilities. Daniel watched over her shoulder, asking questions, understanding immediately what she was doing. Within 20 minutes, the new navigation protocol was ready. Vea ran it through the simulator 3 times to make sure it worked. "That is brilliant," Daniel said. His voice held genuine admiration. "Thank you." Vea felt warmth spread through her chest. She had contributed something valuable. Daniel had asked for her help, had trusted her expertise, and had thanked her for it. No one in her family had ever done that. The Meridian reached the debris field in just under 4 hours. The civilian transport was badly damaged, listing to one side. Pieces of shattered metal and rock drifted all around it, making approach dangerous. Daniel took manual control of the ship. He followed Vea's navigation pattern perfectly. weaving through the debris with careful precision. Twice large pieces came close enough to trigger alarms, but Daniel stayed calm, adjusting course smoothly. They reached the transport. Rescue shuttles launched immediately. The operation took 2 hours. Every person on the transport was brought aboard the Meridian. Some were injured. All were terrified, but they were alive. Vea watched from the bridge as the refugees came aboard. She saw families clinging to each other. She saw Daniel go down to the docking bay personally to greet them. He knelt down to talk to the children, making them smile despite everything they had been through. Something inside Vea cracked open. She had been taught that compassion was weakness, that caring about strangers made you vulnerable. But watching Daniel, watching his crew work together to save these people, she realized her teachers had been wrong. This was not weakness. This was strength. The strength to care even when it was hard. The strength to help even when it was risky. The strength to choose kindness over calculation. That evening, Daniel announced a celebration dinner. It was a human tradition, he explained. After a successful mission, the crew came together to share a meal and stories. The dining hall was packed. Crew members from both human and Valterian backgrounds sat together. The refugees joined them, grateful and relieved. Someone had cooked real food instead of using the replicators. The smell filled the air, warm and rich. Vea sat at a table with Daniel, Sophie, and several other crew members. She felt awkward at first, not sure how to participate. But Sophie asked her questions about Valterian combat techniques. The questions were genuine, interested, not mocking or dismissive. Vea found herself answering, then explaining, then actually enjoying the conversation. Sophie listened with real attention, asking follow-up questions that showed she understood what Vea was teaching. Other crew members joined in. They shared stories from their own experiences. They laughed together. Someone told a joke that Vea did not fully understand, but the laughter was infectious. She found herself smiling. Then Daniel did something unexpected. He asked someone to play music. A crew member pulled out a small instrument, something with strings. He began to play. The melody was soft and beautiful, rising and falling like waves. Other crew members started singing. The words were in a language Vea did not know, but the emotion behind them was clear. Vea sat very still, listening. She had been taught that music was frivolous, a waste of time, but this music made her feel things she had no names for. Sadness and joy mixed together, longing and hope, connection. She looked around the room, at the crew members singing together, at the refugee families holding their children close, at Daniel who was watching everyone with quiet satisfaction, glad they were safe and together. This was what humans had that Valterians did not. Community, connection, the ability to find joy even after hardship. The willingness to care about each other not because it was logical, but because it was right. Later that night, Vea could not sleep. She got up and wandered to the observation deck. The stars stretched out endlessly, the same stars she had always known. But somehow they looked different now, less cold. Less distant, she heard footsteps behind her. Daniel walked up and stood beside her at the window. Could not sleep? He asked. Too much thinking, Vea said. Want to talk about it? Vea was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I do not understand humans. You risked your ship and crew for strangers. You celebrated afterward like it was nothing. You play music and sing and laugh. Everything I was taught says these things are weaknesses. But watching you today, watching all of you, I realized something. What? Daniel asked gently. My teachers were wrong. Vea's voice shook slightly. Caring is not weakness.
Compassion is not foolish.
And maybe the emotions I was taught to suppress are not flaws. Maybe they are what make life worth living. Daniel turned to look at her. His eyes were soft. I think you just figured out what it means to be human. Or at least what it means to be the best version of human. We are not perfect. We fail all the time, but we care enough to keep trying. What do Valterians do when they fail? He asked. Vea thought about her training, about the punishments for mistakes, about how failure was seen as unforgivable. We pretend we did not, she said quietly. We hide it, we lie about it. Because showing weakness means losing respect, losing status, losing everything. Daniel shook his head. That is not strength. That is fear. Real strength is admitting when you are scared, when you are wrong, when you need help. It is choosing to be kind even when it is hard. It is caring about people even when they cannot give you anything in return. Vea felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, but Daniel had seen. He did not comment on it. He just stood beside her, steady and patient. I want to learn, Vea said. I want to understand this. How to care without fear. How to feel without breaking. How to be like you. You already are learning, Daniel said. You helped save 43 people today. You sat with the crew and talked with them. You listened to music and let yourself feel something. That is huge progress, Vea. You should be proud. Proud, Vea tested the word. No one had ever told her to be proud of. 4 months had passed since the wedding. Vea barely recognized herself anymore. She laughed now. She smiled. She looked forward to waking up each morning because it meant spending another day with Daniel and the crew, who had become her friends. She and Daniel had fallen into comfortable routines. Morning coffee together. Strategy discussions. Walks through the arboretum. Late-night conversations on the observation deck. They talked about everything. Their pasts. Their dreams. Their fears. Vea had told Daniel things she had never told anyone. About the loneliness of her childhood. About the impossible standards she could never meet. About the feeling of being invisible in her own family. Daniel had listened to all of it without judgment. He had shared his own pain too. The guilt he felt about surviving when his family did not. The nightmares that still woke him up sometimes. The fear that he would fail the people who depended on him. One night, Vea woke to a sound from Daniel's quarters. A cry quickly muffled. She sat up in her bed, listening. Another sound. Pain or fear. She got up and went to his door. She hesitated, then knocked softly. No answer. The sound came again, and this time she recognized it. A nightmare. Vea overrode the door lock, something she had never done before. But Daniel was hurting, and she could not stand by and do nothing. She found him tangled in his sheets, his face twisted with distress. His body was tense, shaking. She had seen this before in soldiers who had experienced trauma. She had experienced it herself, Daniel, she said softly. She touched his shoulder gently. Daniel, wake up. You are safe. His eyes opened suddenly. He jerked upright, disoriented, his breathing fast. He looked around wildly before his eyes focused on her face. Vea, he said. His voice was rough. I am sorry. Did I wake you? Do not apologize, she said. She sat on the edge of his bed. Are you all right? He rubbed his face with his hands. Just a dream. Old memories. It happens sometimes, Vea understood. She had her own nightmares. Do you want to talk about it? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he started talking. He told her about the day he lost his family. The attack that came without warning. The fire, the screaming. The way he searched through the wreckage knowing he would not find them alive. His voice broke as he spoke. Vea reached out and took his hand. She squeezed it gently, offering comfort the way he had offered it to her so many times. I dreamed that I could have saved them, Daniel said. That if I had been faster, smarter, better, they would still be alive. I know it is not rational. I know there was nothing I could have done. But the dreams do not care about logic. I have nightmares too, Vea said softly. About my training. About failing. About being alone. They feel so real even when I know they are just dreams. Daniel looked at their joined hands. How do you deal with them? Before I did not. I just endured them. Vea paused. But now I think about the people who care about me. About you. About Sophie and the crew. About the fact that I am not alone anymore. It helps. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened. You are not alone. And neither am I. Not anymore. They sat together in the darkness, neither of them speaking. After a while, Daniel's breathing slowed. The tension left his shoulders. Vea stayed until she was sure he was calm. Thank you, Daniel said quietly. For being here. For understanding always, Vea said. And she meant it. After that night, something shifted between them. The friendship they had built became something deeper. More intimate, more real. Vea found herself thinking about Daniel constantly. The way he smiled. The sound of his laugh. The gentle way he treated everyone around him. She was falling in love with him. The realization terrified her. Love was not something Valterians talked about. Marriages were arranged for political or genetic advantages. Emotions were complications, but humans loved freely. They chose their partners based on connection, not contracts, and Vea was beginning to understand why. Love made everything brighter, more meaningful, more worth fighting for. Sophie noticed the change. She pulled Vea aside one afternoon. "So," she said with a knowing smile, "you and Daniel, what about us?" Vea asked, trying to keep her face neutral. "You are in love with him." Vea's careful mask cracked. "Is it that obvious?" "To everyone except Daniel, probably." Sophie laughed. "He is kind of oblivious when it comes to his own feelings. But trust me, he feels the same way. I have known him for 10 years. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Vea's heart beat faster. Really? Sophie's expression became serious. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I do not know." Vea felt overwhelmed. This marriage was supposed to be political. We agreed to that. Agreements can change. Sophie put a hand on Vea's shoulder. "Life is short. If you care about him, tell him. The worst thing you can do is waste time being scared when you could be happy." Vea thought about Sophie's words for days. She wanted to tell Daniel how she felt, but fear held her back. What if he did not feel the same way? What if she was misreading everything? What if telling him ruined what they already had? 2 weeks later, the decision was taken out of her hands. The Meridian docked at a large neutral station for resupply. Daniel suggested they take the afternoon off and explore the station together. There was a festival happening, he said. Different cultures celebrating their heritage. Is this what humans call a date? Vea asked. She had learned the word from the crew. Daniel looked surprised, then smiled. "If you want it to be, yes, I do," Vea said. They walked through the festival together. The station was decorated with lights and colors from dozens of different worlds. Music played from multiple sources, creating a strange but beautiful harmony. Daniel showed her human traditions. They tried foods from Earth. They watched a dance performance. They stopped at a game booth where you threw balls at targets. Daniel won her a small stuffed animal, something called a bear. Vea held it carefully, treasuring it. Then Daniel asked her to dance. Vea hesitated. Valterians did not dance for pleasure. But Daniel extended his hand with that gentle smile, and she could not refuse. They moved together awkwardly at first. Neither knew the other's style. But Daniel was patient and Vea was a quick learner. Soon they found a rhythm that worked. Vea looked up at Daniel's face as they danced. He was smiling down at her with such warmth, such affection. She felt her heart swell with emotion. "This is nice," Daniel said softly. "Being here with you, yes," Vea agreed. "It is." For the first time in her life, Vea felt completely happy. Not because she had achieved something or met some standard. Just because she was here in this moment with someone who cared about her. Their perfect afternoon was shattered when a familiar voice called out, "Vea." She turned. High Commander Kresh stood a few meters away, surrounded by his guards. His face was hard with disapproval. All of Vea's joy evaporated. She felt like a child caught doing something wrong. Kresh walked toward them. "Look at you," he said in Valterian. "Dancing with your human like a common entertainer. Have you no shame? No dignity?" Daniel stepped slightly in front of Vea. His voice was calm but firm. "Commander Kresh, we are enjoying the festival. There is no reason for hostility." Kresh ignored him. He kept his eyes on Vea. "You have disgraced yourself and your house. You have abandoned everything Valterian to play human. It is pathetic." "That is enough," Daniel said. His voice had gone cold. "You have no right to speak to her that way." Kresh finally looked at Daniel. "I have every right. She is Valterian, or she was before you corrupted her with your weak human sentimentality. Vea has made her own choices," Daniel said. "She is stronger and braver than you will ever understand." Kresh's eyes narrowed. "You think you know strength, human? You know nothing. Valterians are warriors. We do not waste our time on frivolous emotions and pointless celebrations." "No," Daniel said quietly. "You waste your time being afraid of anything that makes you feel. That is not strength. That is cowardice." The crowd around them had gone quiet. People were watching. Kresh's face darkened with rage. "You dare call me a coward?" Kresh's voice was dangerous now. "You dare insult me in front of witnesses?" "I dare to speak the truth," Daniel said. "Then let us see whose truth is stronger." Kresh's voice carried across the crowd. "I challenge you to ritual combat. If you lose, Vea returns to Valteria for proper re-education. If I lose, I will never interfere with your marriage again." "No," Vea said immediately. Daniel, you cannot. Valterians are engineered for combat. You will not survive. Daniel looked at her. His eyes were gentle. Some things are worth the risk, please, Vea whispered. Her voice broke. Please do not do this. But Daniel had already turned back to Kresh. I accept your challenge. The fight was scheduled for the next day in the station's arena. Word spread quickly. Hundreds of people gathered to watch. Humans and Valterians. Other species curious about the outcome. Vea sat in the viewing area. Her hands clenched so tight her nails cut into her palms. Sophie sat beside her, offering silent support. The fight began. Kresh was bigger, stronger, faster. His first strike sent Daniel stumbling backward. Vea's heart lurched. This was a mistake. Daniel was going to die and it would be her fault. But Daniel did not give up. He dodged the next strike, using speed instead of strength. He was not trying to overpower Kresh, he was studying him. Looking for patterns, weaknesses, it was the most human thing possible. Fighting smart instead of hard. Using strategy instead of brute force. And it was working. Daniel spent 3 days in the medical bay recovering from the fight. Vea rarely left his side. She sat by his bed holding his hand, watching him sleep. Every time he woke up, she was there. Sophie brought her food. The crew checked in regularly. Even Kresh sent a message of grudging respect. Daniel had earned something rare that day. The respect of a Valterian high commander. On the 3rd day, Daniel was finally cleared to return to his quarters. He could walk, though slowly. His ribs were still healing. The cut above his eye had been treated, but it would leave a scar. I think it makes me look tough, Daniel joked as Vea helped him down the corridor. What do you think? I think you are lucky to be alive, Vea said. Her voice was sharper than she intended. You could have died. For me, why would you do something so reckless? Daniel stopped walking. He turned to face her. Because you are worth it. Because I love you. Because some things are more important than safety. Vea felt tears burn her eyes. She had been trying so hard to stay strong, to not fall apart, but his words broke through her control. I was so scared, she whispered. I thought I was going to lose you. Daniel pulled her into a gentle hug, careful of his injuries. You did not lose me. I am right here, and I am not going anywhere. They stood in the corridor holding each other. Vea pressed her face against his shoulder and let herself cry. Not tears of sadness, but of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion. That evening, they sat together in Daniel's quarters. The view screen showed the stars outside, endless and beautiful. I need to tell you something, Daniel said. He looked nervous. An official message came through while I was in medical. From your family? From House Thandros, Vea's stomach dropped. What did they say? Daniel handed her a data pad. She read the message slowly. Each word felt like a physical blow. Her family formally disowned her. She was stripped of her title, her rank, and her citizenship. She was no longer considered Valterian. The message was signed by her father. It was cold and final. Vea set down the data pad. Her hands were shaking. So that is it then. I have no family. No home, nothing. That is not true, Daniel said firmly. You have me. You have Sophie and the crew. You have people who love you and value you. Family is not always the one you are born into. Sometimes it is the one you choose. But I am nobody now. Vea's voice broke. I am not a princess. I am not Valterian. I am nothing. Daniel took her face in his hands, making her look at him. You are everything. You are brave and strong and kind. You are the woman I love. You are not defined by a title or a family that never deserved you. You are defined by who you choose to be. Vea wanted to believe him, but the pain was too fresh, too deep. She had spent her whole life trying to earn her family's approval. And now they had thrown her away completely. She stood up and walked to the window. She stared at the stars without really seeing them. Daniel came up beside her but did not touch her. He just stood there offering quiet support. After a long silence, he said, You do not have to decide anything right now. Take your time. Grieve if you need to. I will be here. Vea spent the next few days in a fog. She went through the motions of daily life, but her heart was not in it. She felt lost, untethered, like she was floating in space with nothing to hold on to. Daniel was patient. He did not push her to talk or feel better. He just stayed close, a steady presence. Sophie brought her tea and sat with her in silence. The crew gave her space but let her know they were there if she needed anything. Even Torin, the young Valterian crew member, stopped by to say he was sorry for what happened. Slowly, the fog began to lift. Vea started to see things more clearly. Her family had disowned her, yes, but they had never really owned her in the first place. They had never valued her, never loved her, never seen her as anything but a tool. But Daniel did. Sophie did. The crew did. These humans had shown her more genuine care in a few months than her family had in her entire life. One evening, Vea asked Daniel to gather the crew. She had something she needed to say. They assembled in the common area. Everyone was there. Human crew members, Valterian crew members, all of them looking at her with concern and curiosity. Vea stood in front of them, her heart pounding. She had practiced what she wanted to say, but now the words felt inadequate. She took a deep breath and began. My family has disowned me. I am no longer Valterian in their eyes. For a few days I thought that meant I was nothing, but I was wrong. She looked around at the faces watching her. I am more than I have ever been, because for the first time in my life I get to choose who I am and where I belong. She turned to Daniel. I choose Earth as my home. I choose humanity. And I choose you, not because a treaty forced me, but because I want to. Because you showed me what it means to be valued, to be seen, to be loved. Tears ran down her face freely now. She did not try to hide them. I was raised to believe emotions were weakness. But you taught me that feeling deeply is the greatest strength of all. You taught me that kindness is not foolish, that caring is not a flaw, that love is worth everything. She looked directly at Daniel. So I am asking you, Daniel Hayes, would you be willing to make this marriage real? Not political, not arranged, but real. Will you have me not as a princess or a symbol, but just as Vea? Daniel crossed the space between them in 3 steps. His eyes were bright with emotion. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I have been yours since the day I met you. I was just waiting for you to see it. He dropped to one knee in front of her in the human way of proposing marriage. The crew gasped. I do not have a ring, Daniel said, but I have something better. He pulled out a small crystal pendant from his pocket. Inside was a bit of dark soil. This is Earth soil, he said, from the place where I grew up. I am giving it to you as a symbol. Earth is your home now, and I promise to make sure you always feel welcome there. I promise to stand beside you, to support you, to love you for the rest of my life. Vea, will you marry me? Really marry me? Vea could barely see through her tears. Yes, she said. Yes, I will. Daniel stood and pulled her into his arms. The crew erupted in cheers and applause. Sophie was crying happy tears. Even some of the Valterian crew members were smiling. Someone started playing music. Someone else brought out drinks. The impromptu celebration lasted for hours. Vea stayed in Daniel's arms most of the time, feeling safe and loved, and finally at home. Later, much later, they stood together on the observation deck. Just the two of them. The pendant hung around Vea's neck, the earth soil a comforting weight against her chest. I am scared, Vea admitted. I have never been to Earth. I do not know what it will be like. What if I do not fit in? What if people do not accept me? Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders. You will fit in fine. And even if it is hard at first, we will figure it out together. That is what partnership means. You are not alone in this. Tell me about Earth, Vea said. Tell me everything. Daniel smiled and began to talk. He told her about oceans that stretched to the horizon, mountains that touched the sky, forests full of life, cities that never slept. He told her about seasons and weather, about rain and snow and sunshine. He told her about the people, diverse and complicated, full of flaws and beauty. He told her about art and music and food, about traditions and celebrations, about the thousands of different ways humans found to live and love and be happy. Vea listened to every word, her imagination painting pictures. She realized she was excited. For the first time, she was looking forward to the future instead of dreading it. It sounds beautiful, she said softly. It is, and you will love it. Daniel kissed the top of her head. I promise. Over the next few weeks, the Meridian prepared for its return to Earth. The diplomatic mission was complete. They would be reassigned once they got home. Vea spent the time learning everything she could about Earth. She studied the languages, the customs, the history. Sophie taught her about casual human interaction. The crew helped her practice small talk and humor. She was still nervous, still uncertain, But she was also hopeful. She had Daniel. She had friends. She had a future she actually wanted. The night before they reached Earth, Vea could not sleep. She got up and went to the observation deck. Daniel found her there a few minutes later. He always seemed to know when she needed him. They stood together looking at the blue and green planet growing larger on the screen. "That is home," Daniel said quietly. "That is where we will build our life together." Vea leaned against him. "It is beautiful, so are you." She turned to look at him. "Thank you for what?" "For everything. For being patient with me. For showing me kindness when I expected cruelty. For defending me when no one else would. For loving me when I thought I was unlovable. For giving me a home." Daniel cupped her face gently. "You were always lovable, Vea. You were always worthy. You just needed someone to show you that, and I am honored that I got to be that person." They kissed, soft and sweet, a promise of everything to come. When they pulled apart, Vea smiled. A real smile, full of genuine happiness. "I am ready," she said. "I am ready to go home," Daniel smiled back. "Then let us go home." They stood together, watching Earth grow closer. Vea felt no fear, no anxiety, just excitement and hope and love. She had been forced to marry a human she feared. But through his kindness and patience and unwavering love, she had found something she never knew she needed. A home, a family, a purpose. The meridian descended through Earth's atmosphere slowly, giving Vea time to take in the view. She pressed her face close to the observation window, watching in wonder. Blue oceans stretched out below them, deeper and richer than any color she had seen before. White clouds drifted across the surface like living things, and land green and brown and full of life. It was nothing like the sterile ships and stations she had known. This was alive in a way that made her heart race. "It is even more beautiful than the pictures," Vea whispered. Daniel stood beside her, smiling. "Wait until you smell the ocean. See the mountains. Feel real rain. Pictures cannot capture what Earth is really like." The ship landed at a coastal city where Daniel had grown up. As they walked down the ramp, Vea stopped suddenly. The air hit her like a wall. It was thick and wet and smelled of salt. Wind touched her skin, warm and constant. She had never felt real wind before. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked. Vea nodded, unable to speak. She was overwhelmed in the best way possible. This was Earth. This was real. This was home. Daniel took her hand and led her through the spaceport. People stared at her, some with curiosity, some with caution. Vea was clearly not human. Her silver skin and violet markings made that obvious. But most people just smiled politely and moved on with their day. They took a transport to Daniel's childhood home. The house was small but well-maintained, sitting on a hill overlooking the ocean. Family friends had kept it up while Daniel was in space. Inside, the house was warm and lived in. Photographs covered the walls. Daniel's family frozen in moments of happiness. Vea studied each picture carefully, learning about the people who had shaped the man she loved. Daniel showed her around. His old bedroom, the kitchen where his mother had cooked, the living room where they had gathered in the evenings. He told stories about each space, his voice soft with memory and grief. Vea listened carefully. She wanted to know everything about him, about the life he had before they met. She wanted to understand what made him so kind, so patient, so willing to see the good in others. That evening, neighbors came by with food. It was a human tradition, Daniel explained. When someone new moved into the community, people brought meals to welcome them. An elderly woman named Helen brought a casserole and hugged Vea like they were old friends. "Welcome to Earth, dear," Helen said. "We are so glad to have you." Vea did not know what to say. She was not used to this kind of easy affection from strangers. "Thank you," she managed finally. Over the next few weeks, Vea began to settle into life on Earth. It was not always easy. Human customs were complicated. Social interactions often confused her. She was too direct sometimes, not understanding when humans were being polite versus honest. She struggled with things like small talk and sarcasm. She did not understand why humans asked "How are you?" when they did not really want a detailed answer. She did not understand why they laughed at things that were not funny. But Daniel was patient. He explained things without making her feel stupid. He helped her navigate social situations. And slowly she began to understand. Not everyone was welcoming. One evening at a community gathering, a man made a rude comment about Valterians. He said they were cold and heartless. that they cared more about war than peace. He did not realize Vea was standing right there. Vea felt anger flash hot inside her. Her first instinct was to respond with Valterian directness, which would have meant a confrontation, possibly violence. But she remembered Daniel's lessons about choosing kindness over conflict. Before she could respond, Daniel stepped in. He did not argue or get angry. He just asked the man if he had ever actually met a Valterian. The man admitted he had not. Daniel suggested maybe he should get to know one before judging them all. Then he introduced Vea. The man looked embarrassed. He apologized awkwardly. Vea accepted the apology with grace even though she was still angry inside. Later, she asked Daniel why he had not defended her more forcefully. Because anger would have proven his point, Daniel said. But showing him you are not what he expected? That changes minds. That is how you win people over. Not with force, but with patience. Vea was learning that being human meant more than just living on Earth. It meant choosing compassion when it was hard. It meant giving people second chances. It meant believing in growth and change. After a few months, Vea realized she needed more than just settling in. She needed purpose. She had been a warrior and a diplomat. She could not just sit idle. She talked to Daniel about it. He listened carefully, then suggested an idea. What if she created a cultural exchange program? She was uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between humans and Valterians. She could teach humans about Valterian culture and show Valterians that humans were not weak. The idea excited Vea. She began working on it immediately. She reached out to Earth's Interspecies Academy. She proposed a program where she would teach combat tactics and cultural understanding. To her surprise, they accepted eagerly. Sophie volunteered to be her first student. They trained together regularly. Sophie was a quick learner, and she asked thoughtful questions. Other students joined. Some were military, some were just curious civilians. All of them were eager to learn. Vea also started teaching Valterian philosophy and history. She showed her students that Valterian culture had value, even if its approach to emotions was flawed. She talked about the discipline and focus Valterians learned, the strategic thinking, the dedication to excellence. But she also talked about what she had learned from humans, about the importance of compassion and flexibility, about the strength in admitting weakness, about how caring for others made you stronger, not weaker. Word spread. Young Valterians who felt trapped by their culture's rigid expectations began reaching out to her. They asked questions. They shared their struggles. Vea realized she was becoming something she never expected. A teacher, a mentor, a bridge between two worlds. 6 months after arriving on Earth, Daniel and Vea decided to have a proper wedding. Not the cold political ceremony they had endured, but a real celebration of their love. They planned it together. They would blend human and Valterian traditions. The ceremony would take place on the beach at sunset. Vea would wear ceremonial Valterian armor, polished and beautiful. Daniel would wear his dress uniform. The guest list grew quickly. The entire crew of the Meridian came. Community members, students from the academy, and surprisingly, a small group of young Valterians who had heard about Vea's story and wanted to witness her union with Daniel. Even more surprising, Kresh sent a message. He could not attend personally, but he sent his approval and a traditional Valterian blessing. Vea had earned his respect that day in the arena, and he had kept his word about not interfering. The day of the wedding was perfect. The sky was clear, painted gold and pink by the setting sun. The ocean rolled gently against the shore. Chairs were arranged in rows on the sand, all of them filled with people who had come to celebrate. Vea walked down the makeshift aisle with Sophie at her side. She had asked Sophie to stand with her, as humans called it. Sophie had cried happy tears when Vea asked. Daniel stood waiting at the altar, the ocean behind him. He looked handsome in his uniform. But more than that, he looked happy. His eyes lit up when he saw Vea, and his smile was brilliant. They joined hands. The officiant spoke about love and partnership, about choosing to stand together, about building a life based on respect and trust and genuine affection. Then it was time for their vows. Vea went first. Her voice was steady, though her heart was racing. Daniel, when I met you, I was broken. I did not know it then, but I had been taught to hate myself, taught that I was worthless, taught that emotions were weakness. You showed me I was wrong about all of it. You treated me with kindness when I expected cruelty. You gave me choice when I expected control. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw me as a tool. You taught me what love means. Not just romantic love, but love for life. Love for people. Love for possibility. I promise to stand beside you always. To support you. To challenge you. To love you with everything I am. You gave me a home when I had none. Now I promise to be your home too. There was not a dry eye in the audience. Even some of the Valtirian observers looked moved. Daniel took a breath and began his vows. Vea, when I first saw you at our political wedding, I saw someone trapped, someone scared but trying so hard to be strong. I wanted to help you. I wanted you to feel safe. I had no idea I would fall so completely in love with you. You are the bravest person I have ever met. You left everything you knew. You questioned beliefs you were raised with. You chose growth even when it was painful. You taught me that courage is not about being fearless. It is about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. I promise to always see you, to value your voice, to stand with you against anything that threatens our happiness. I promise to be patient when you struggle and proud when you succeed. I promise to love you exactly as you are, while supporting who you want to become. They exchanged rings, simple bands that represented their commitment. When the officiant pronounced them married, they kissed. The crowd cheered. Music began to play. The celebration lasted into the night. People danced on the beach. Food was shared. Stories were told. Vea found herself laughing freely, dancing with Daniel under the stars, feeling completely and utterly happy.